Alright guys, we're going to be talking about pain management in this video. When it comes to pain management, what method you choose is less important than you have a plan of action. For instance, if you plan for a natural childbirth, but you don't have any ways or plans on how to cope through the intensity of contractions, then your plan to have a natural childbirth is more likely to fail. And if you are just like, well, I'll just see what pain management they give me when I get there, and then you get there and it's too late to get an epidural, and you're struggling through the contractions, are difficult and things like that, and then you have your baby, you might be disappointed because it's like your plan didn't happen or something like that. So overall, no matter what your plan is, have a goal for what your ideal pain management would be, and then have subsequent goals of, okay, so if I don't meet this goal, what are my go-tos to follow up? Now, I have a lot of information below on pain management that kind of goes over some of the risks and benefits of some of your options. So I'm not going to go into great detail with that. A lot of it is going to vary depending on your circumstances and depending on what you want and where you're delivering. For instance, if you're delivering at a birthing center, you don't have the option for an epidural anyway. But overall, I just want to encourage you to have some sort of plan. And overall, I also encourage you to have ways to cope with contractions, even if your plan is definitely to get an epidural or some other pain management plan, because you will experience some labor before, and possibly, again, like if you get to the hospital at 9 centimeters and it's too late to get an epidural, then you may have to, labor for a while with no epidural, which is against what your plan was. But if you're prepared with coping techniques during natural labor, then you'll pretty much be set no matter what. And this is also true if you're having a scheduled C-section, because sometimes things happen and sometimes you go into labor before your scheduled C-section, and then if you don't have any coping measures in hand, then you might really struggle through those. So overall, have a plan. Now, when you are forming your goals for pain management, you also need to keep in mind what your overall goal of your labor is. For instance, if one of the goals in labor is that you want to be as mobile as possible, then an epidural won't be a good choice. So look at all of the elements of each pain management method so that when you make your choice, it will fit your overall labor plan. Also keeping in mind, which pain managements tend to slow down labor, which pain managements help speed up labor. Keep things like that in mind as well. And also keep in mind that if you are adamant that you do not want a C-section, some pain management methods, especially things like epidurals, may slightly increase your risk of a C-section. So if you are attempting a VBAC, for instance, you may want to consider avoiding all things that increase your risk for C-sections, because you're already at a higher risk for C-section with a history of a C-section. So just keep all that things in mind. And remember that there's no right or wrong answer. There's no definite way to make sure everything will go well, and there's no thing that will absolutely make sure things go badly. Ultimately, this is your decision, and you have to kind of work through it for yourself and with your partner and with your baby in mind, and just decide. Another thing to keep in mind is if you're planning on breastfeeding, some methods of pain management can interfere with breastfeeding. Not that you won't be able to breastfeed for sure, but it might make things a little bit more difficult, and just consider those things when you are making those decisions. Consider them beforehand as you make your overall plan, and then consider them in the moment, because again, sometimes our plans change. I have had clients who were determined not to do any pain management, but as labor went on, certain things needed to change, and sometimes our plans have to change. And they had epidurals and they had perfectly healthy babies. So don't consider anything as an absolute dictator for what your labor will be like. Just decide what you feel comfortable with, and then be prepared for maybe those plans will change, and that's okay too. We can make those decisions in the moment. But the more informed you are about each type of option for pain management beforehand, the more likely you'll be to be able to make informed decisions in the moment. And also ask your care provider. I want to know all the risks and benefits, and go through the informed consent steps, BRAIN. Go through those with your provider so that you can make sure that you're making a decision that you fully feel comfortable with, and that after the baby is born and all of the struggle is over, that you can look back and say, yes, I made the right decision, even if it wasn't one I wanted to make. What do true contractions feel like? Now, contractions are different for every single person, and I'm going to be very careful that I don't put anything into your mind on what your mind may create and choose to be fearful of or anything like that. I'm just gonna go over basic areas of your body where usually contraction, tension, and pain is. Now, regular Braxton Hicks contractions usually are around your belly, and they usually feel like a tightening, just a tightening over your entire belly. True labor contractions that cause cervical change and are active labor usually start from your back. You'll feel the tightening begin there, and it will wrap around your belly. Again, this is not true for everyone. It can vary so much, but if you recognize those feelings and you'll be like, oh, this is a real strong contraction. And basically, the pain does increase slowly over time, but once you are in full-on active labor, let's say like 6 centimeters, the pain doesn't get stronger so much as it just becomes closer together and maybe lasting a little bit longer. For instance, your early labor contractions will probably be 30 seconds to 45 seconds. Active labor contractions, we like to see them lasting a minute to a minute and a half. Sometimes you can have contractions that'll last 2 to 3 minutes, but the average is a minute, minute and a half for productive contractions. And they will continually get closer and closer together until they're only a few minutes apart, maybe even as little as 2 minutes apart towards the end of labor. Below, I have 2 perspectives on coping with pain management, and it can kind of help you give an idea on how you want to tackle making your pain management choices. One of them is the pain relief perspective, and one of them is the coping through pain perspective. So kind of look at those very closely, figure out which one you feel like you fall more into, and then make that a building place for your pain management plan, and go from there. Before I close out this video of pain management, I want to encourage you to look down below at the pain management options that I've listed. These are not all of your chemical pain management options, but I want you to kind of generally have a good idea what each one of them is, so that you can decide which you feel comfortable with when it comes to labor and what questions you might have for your care provider.